To the Wilmington School Committee meeting of October 11th. Call the meeting to order at 7, it looks like 7:08. If you would all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We'll begin our business by noting we have two members absent tonight. Julie Broussard and Peggy Kane are not here. All other members present. And we'll begin with the approval of items by consensus. We'll start with approval of minutes for our public session, September 27th. Do I have a motion? MJ, second by Tom. All those in favor? All right, we also have several executive session minutes that we'll approve. We'll approve them all under one motion unless there's an objection. Executive session minutes from March 8th, 17, April 26th, 17, May 10th, 17, July 12th, 17, July 21st, 17, and September 13th, 17. These are executive session minutes not for release. Do I have a motion for approval? Tom, there's a second. MJ, all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. All right, we have an approval of an out-of-state field trip to York, Maine, to take place on November 14th, 2017. Do we have any comments or questions from the membership? Yes, MJ.
I just have to say, I don't believe I've ever seen a field trip to Stonewall Kitchen in York, Maine, ever come before the board. I think it's a great opportunity and a learning experience outside of the classroom in the marketing, finance, management, and accounting. I think seeing it in action at Stonewall Kitchen, I believe, that's where their main headquarters are located. I think that's a wonderful opportunity for our students to really grasp what that looks like outside of a classroom environment.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the Stonewall Kitchen York, Maine field trip for November 14th, 2017? Jen, a second from MJ. All those in favor? That is unanimous. All right, we're looking for an approval of the CASET Award to the WHS World Language Department for $1,000. And by school committee policy, any any award or monies over $500 needs to be approved by the school committee. Does the membership have any questions or comments? All right. May I have a motion to approve, to accept the CASET Award in the amount of $1,000? Manny, or is that? Nope, that's MJ's hand. And Tom for a second. All those in favor? And we certainly thank CASET for that. All right, and we'll approve warrants G405, G406, R204, L10, L11, and L12. If I have a motion?
So,
Manny, second by MJ. All those in favor? That is unanimous. And warrants payroll 9/27/17, 10/11/17. I have a motion. Jen, second. MJ, all those in favor? That is unanimous. And warrants SPED 03. May I have a motion? Jen, and a second. Manny, all those in favor? That is 3 in favor, Manny, Tom, and Jen, with 2 abstentions, Steve and MJ. All right. At this point, we'd like to welcome our student representative, Joe Wilson. Joe, do you have something to tell us tonight?
Yes, sir. Wilmington High School has been very busy since the last time I talked to you. I believe it was about last month. On October 21st, our Model United Nations chapter will be representing WHS and showing off their skills in diplomacy at the St. John's High School Conference. Students will compete in many different conferences, ranging from a Vietnam War conflict to a resolution of the North Korean missile crisis. DECA was given the chance to attend a leadership academy at Bentley University on October 24th. Students will have an opportunity here to better themselves as leaders. We will tour the campus. Lunch will be provided by Bentley, and we'll have opportunities to talk to leaders in all types of, all fields of, business that DECA deals with. WHS Mentor Program has started planning on our very popular Mr. and Miss WHS contest. The contest will take place on November 1st, and it is a competition between students, all grades, to be appointed Mr. and Miss WHS. It's like a talent show, fashion show, all mixed into one, and the students really enjoy it. As you may have seen around the building, the class of 2021 is showing their interest in their own class. You can see their creative campaign posters for class office. I've seen a couple of them, and they're very creative. They're posted in the front main office and around the building. Wildcat News is holding its first meeting, I believe, sometime next week. Their main purpose is going to be writing about the happenings here at WHS, sports games, all the clubs, all the different clubs, activities. And that's going to be really nice to see started up again. Rotary Club here at WHS was asked to assist with the Haunted Woods production at Hardin Tavern. Students of the Rotary Club were very eager to help out with the production, and we'll see some of our students there later in October. Football this year has started out strong with a 4-1 record. We have seen a change in the offense, and I think all the students were very pleased with it, and I believe our record also stands for how pleased we are with our new offense and how great our team's doing. Volleyball was able to secure a winning record during one of a very special night, the Dig Pink Night, which is their fundraiser. That fundraiser goes to research in stage 4 breast cancer. A couple of the team members had 100% serve ratings that night, so they did very well, especially on a very special night. And I believe that is all I have for you tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any comments? Questions? Joe, thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take one item out of order. We're going to, I'll actually turn this over to Paul to discuss the MASS Academic Excellence Award.
Thank you. I'm pleased to announce that Aditya Gotham, a senior at Wilmington High School, has been selected as a recipient of the 2017-18 Superintendent Academic Excellence Award. Aditya's in the audience with his parents. Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents sponsors this award on an annual basis in each Massachusetts public high school. The selection of the award is traditionally made in the fall, allowing the selected student to include this honor in his or her credential package. The Academic Excellence Award is intended to be given to a senior high school student who has distinguished him or herself in the pursuit of excellence during their high school careers. I have a little bio, if you will, of Aditya, so if you'd bear with me, I'd like to read it. Aditya is an outstanding and articulate student who takes on the most demanding course schedule Wilmington High School has to offer each year. Aditya is a member of the National Honor Society, and last spring he was named Wilmington High School honoree of the Middlesex League High School's SILS Award in recognition of students who most represent the following characteristics: scholarship, integrity, leadership, and spirit. Aditya's desire for knowledge and real-world experience goes beyond the classroom. He has sought various opportunities, including, but not limited to, job shadowing opportunities with an oncologist and participating in specialized enrichment programs over the past 2 summers. Being able to explore the world of pre-medical studies at Tufts University and be immersed to work within a laboratory at Boston University have further deepened his interest in life sciences. He is immersed within the Wilmington High School community, taking part in various extracurricular endeavors, including winter and spring track in the Model UN. Last year, he also co-founded the very popular Ping Pong Club. His volunteer efforts include serving as videographer for the girls' volleyball team and volunteering year-round at Newton Wellesley Hospital in the day surgical unit. In his free time, he plays piano and continues to take lessons. I have a certificate here that I'd like to present to you, Aditya, and let me just read it. Certificate of Academic Excellence to Aditya Gotham. Having duly qualified under the standards prescribed by the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, is hereby awarded this Certificate of Academic Excellence. In witness whereof, the seal of the association and the signature of the Superintendent of Schools, and hereunto affixed. Congratulations.
Congratulations to you, sir, and certainly to your parents. That's a fantastic accomplishment. We wish you all the all best wishes for the future. It sounds like your future is very bright, and you're going to have to wear shades. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. All right, and we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I have a few items for the superintendent's report. The first one is the enrollment update. I've given you an update of where the enrollment was as of October 2nd. This information came directly from the schools. Currently, we have to submit to the DESE our enrollment counts. The DESE goes through a verification process, and it goes back and forth. They work with each district just to make sure that each student is counted once and only once at different districts and so forth. So this is very preliminary. It is subject to change. But based on information received from the schools, we're about 3,419 students as of October 2nd. Again, that will change as we go through the verification process with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Our OIT, our Office of Information Technology, Dana Burnham and Trish Volpe do a tremendous amount of work with the DESE getting these numbers finalized. And it's quite a process getting the information to the DESE and then working with them to verify and so forth. So this is just to give you an idea of where we are based on school information.
MJ?
Will we get a report in the spring with updated enrollment information?
Yeah, once everything's verified and finalized, we'll get you it'll be the October 1 numbers, but
Right.
it may not be until December by the
Okay.
time everything gets finalized and so forth. But yeah, we'll give you a final October 1st number.
Do you anticipate any new influx with the numbers, with students coming and students going?
I don't really envision it changing much.
Okay.
I know some districts have seen an influx of students from, for example, Puerto Rico with the hurricanes and so forth. We have not seen anything here.
Okay.
I know some surrounding districts have seen some students coming over. Again, we haven't seen them here, so I'm not sure. But it'll go a few either direction, but I
Okay.
don't see a huge change.
Thank you.
Tom?
13? Grade 13?
Yeah, those are like post-grad, if you will, special ed students. That
Oh,
are-
okay.
yeah.
No further comments? Thank you, Paul.
I have a couple other items I'd just like to go over. A few Wilmington High School students received some awards. The high school is proud to announce that senior Jesse Valenti has been named as a semifinalist in the 2018 National Merit Scholarship Program. Over 1.6 million students and more than 22,000 high schools entered the 2018 scholarship program, by taking the 2016 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. The 16,000 semifinalists are among the highest scoring entrants in each state and represent less than 1% of each state's seniors. So that's quite an accomplishment. We also have 4 students that were named commended students. The following 4 students in the class of 2018 have been named commended students in the 2018 National Merit Scholarship Program. They are Haley Duzabon, Aditya Gotham, Travis Haynes, and Jillian Lentini. Commended students are being recognized for their exceptional academic promise demonstrated by their outstanding performance on the PSAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. These students named are among 34,000 high school performers out of the 1.6 million students who took the test. It's quite an accomplishment. And Vittorio Iocco has been selected as a National Hispanic Scholar, a recognition program of the College Board for those students who scored in the top 2.5% among Hispanic and Latino PSAT and MSQT test takers in the New England region. So congratulations to all 6 of those students.
Absolutely.
Last week, or 2 weeks ago, Diana Hill presented on the Special Olympics, and she had some dates and so forth. She worked with the Special Olympics, so we have dates now, and they will be, the date is Wednesday, May 2nd, with a rain date of Thursday, May 3rd, for the 2nd annual Wilmington School Day Games. Those 2 dates weren't on her presentation, but as she worked with the Special Olympics, these were a couple other dates that popped out. So May 2nd, rain date, May 3rd. And finally, today we had a second walking school bus at the Woburn Street School. Ms. Stinson's in the audience. I think it went very, very well. I think she had almost 70 students that participated, 3 buses this time instead of 1. It was a perfect day, and it went very, very well. We had plenty of teachers and staff and cafeteria people and so forth, and police officers walking with the students, and it was really, they really, really enjoyed it. And as we mentioned, Ms. Stinson and our safety officer, Brian Moon, will be presenting sometime in the spring, late winter, and hopefully we'll do a walking school bus at the Shawsheen Elementary School. So that's kind of the goal for the spring, so. But it was very, very, very well received, and all the kids had a smile on their face, which is what it's all about. It's all about the kids. It was really good. Okay.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful idea. I think that it's wonderful that we're doing it. Did I hear that you had some additional stops this year?
We did. We picked up a couple of children who usually take a bus, or mom or dad drives them, and they were waiting for us this particular morning with their parents, so they hopped it. We stopped our bus, our walking school bus stopped, and we picked up 2 little friends and continued on to Woburn Street. So it went magnificently.
That's terrific.
So, yes.
And the
Thank
bus
you.
arrived at school on time.
Everybody's in and ready to go. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you. All right, now we, okay, so now we move on to our superintendent search. The status at this point is we have contacted NESDEC and let them know that we have chosen them to conduct our search with us. They have sent us an agreement. At this point, we are looking to create a subcommittee of 2 to negotiate that agreement with NESDEC. Do I have any volunteers to be on that negotiating team? Jen, will...
Well, I would really like to do it, but I'm also would like to move on it quickly. I'm going to be out of town all next week, so if there are 2 people who can do it next week, if not, then I would love to do it the following week, but I don't want to hold anybody up because I won't be in the country at that time.
Okay. Do I have 2 people who would volunteer to negotiate?
What would be the schedule for that?
That would be up to you and, well, to the subcommittee and NESDEC to
Okay.
determine.
Yeah, I'll be on that.
All right. All right, seeing no others, I think we're going to wait a week.
Okay.
All right. So Tom and Jen will serve on that subcommittee, negotiating team. All right. At this point, we are looking to make an appointment of our superintendent to the SEAM Board of Directors. This is something we do, how many, do we do it every year? Yep, annually. Paul, you want to tell us a little bit about just, maybe give us a quick little synopsis of what SEAM is and our relationship to it?
Yep, the SEAM Collaborative is designed to be a cost-effective resource for member districts. The mission of the collaborative is to cooperatively develop and deliver cost-effective programs and services consistent with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 4E for students, school districts, partner organizations, and the community. There are 10 districts as part of the SEAM Collaborative, and they include Wilmington, obviously, Linfield, Melrose, North Reading, Reading, Saugus, Stoneham, Wakefield, Winchester, and Woburn.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion? MJ, the second? Tom? All right, all those in favor of appointing Paul? That's unanimous?
Thank you.
All right, and now we have first readings, two first readings of some policy changes that we've made. Maybe Paul, can you talk to a little bit about what we've done here? I'm sorry, Frank, rather?
Turn it over to Frank.
Sure. The first policy that I'd like to talk about is the procurement requirements policy. The policy subcommittee met to review this, and I believe they were recommending the approval by the school committee. This policy is really modernizing our government. Every so often, the state legislature changes the thresholds for purchasing requirements. Currently, it's $25,000, and it will go up to $50,000 for procuring bids or requests for proposals. Anything under $10,000 will be secured using sound business practices. And from $10,000 to $50,000, the school district would be required to go out and seek 3 quotes. They will develop a written description of the services or the supplies that they're interested in receiving, and they'll go out and get 3 quotes and award the request for proposal or the quote to the bidder with the who is providing the most reasonable service and price. So that's it for that policy. It will bring us in line with the town of Wilmington's policy. It will bring us in line with the state's policy, and it will also bring us in line with the recommendation from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. So I recommend that the school committee approve this first reading of the policy.
Okay. MJ?
I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
With regards to the policy, there's actually 3 I had questions on. The second paragraph stating, when recommending acceptance of a bid, the superintendent will inform the school committee whenever possible of a competitive price of a reasonable substitute for the item specified. I'm a little unsure of that phrase, whenever possible. And I didn't know if you could elaborate what that might look like, potentially.
Okay, well, I'll be here for one of the bids, and that bid will be the transportation bid this year. We'll be developing that in November and bringing it before the school committee.
Okay.
And when we do that, we will make sure that you have a complete review of all of the bids, all of the alternatives that are available, and you'll see what the best price is, and that will be our recommendation. And I'm sure that whoever is in this seat in the future years will do the same thing, to give you an all-encompassing review of that proposal so that there are no questions left unanswered.
Can I ask you, whenever possible, is that what the state legislator has in their recommended, or MASC has in their recommended policy?
Yes, this policy that you're looking at came directly from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees policy manual.
Okay.
So we didn't change the language at all. We're providing this language that MASC has written already, and we're recommending that the school committee approve it.
And not to get hung up on it, would there be any, what would be, whenever possible, like what would that encompass if, let's say, something that wouldn't go before the school committee? What kind of situation would that be?
I really
I'm
can't.
not sure if I'm articulating the question.
When wouldn't it
well.
be possible?
Yeah, when,
So, when we go out to bid, a bid in excess of $50,000, it would be publicized in a newspaper. It would be publicized on the state level, and we would post it outside somewhere in the Roman House. And we may send that bid out, for example, to 8 vendors, let's say, but maybe only 2 vendors or 3 vendors will respond to that bid. That's not an unusual thing. We'll try to get as many bidders as possible, but sometimes they just don't respond to that bid. So maybe that's why they put that language in there whenever possible.
okay. I'm sorry, I'm just a little stuck on that, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right. I would entertain a motion to accept the first reading of policy DJE, procurement requirements. Tom? Second by Jen?
Point of protocol, we don't typically vote on the first readings?
This motion is simply to acknowledge that we've done a first reading.
Okay,
This is
I'm
not,
just-
we're not approving yet.
All right, because I
And
missed,
just as school committee policies, we have 2 readings of every
Right.
policy change. This first reading is just so that the school committee can accept it, digest it, ask questions, and then at our next meeting, we do a second reading, at which time we will vote to approve or disapprove. So this motion, thank you, MJ, this
Thank you,
motion
Steve.
is simply to acknowledge that we've done the first reading. And I've got a first and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous? All right, Frank, tell us a little bit about the school district wellness program policy.
We have 2 experts in the audience here who know more about this than I do, and I think perhaps they should come up here and speak about this particular policy. If they don't want to, I'd be happy to review this, and they could answer any questions that you may have.
Very good.
But they've spent a considerable amount of time on this policy, and they know it inside and out, so it would be best to hear from them.
That's fine, and these are 2 strangers to the school committee. We've not seen you very often. Welcome, Mrs. Crowe and Mrs. Stinson.
thank you.
All right. Do you want to say anything, or would you like to just respond to questions? As we've had the packet for a while, I assume everyone's read through it?
Questions would be great.
Yep.
All right, I'm seeing no questions, so I'm assuming that everyone is pretty comfortable with the changes that have been made?
Actually, I have,
Okay.
there was
okay.
just one point, and it's a minor housekeeping piece, that when we get the final, when we do the second reading, just to revise the adopted date is all, to reflect this year.
Yes.
That is minor. Thank you.
I appreciate that, MJ. Otherwise, you've come to the table for no reason at all. All right, I would accept a motion to accept the first reading of policy ADF, the School District Wellness Program Policy. MJ and Tom, all those in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome, thank you.
All right, at this point, I'm going to welcome an old friend of the school committee, Mr. Mario Marchese, is a former school committee member, and he's come to us tonight to speak about the Masonic Angel Fund presentation. Certainly.
Back in the spotlight.
All right, beautiful. Wonderful. So first of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for allowing me being here today. So my name is Mario Marchese. I'm the presiding master or presiding officer of Friendship Lodge in Wilmington. Friendship Lodge is a Masonic lodge that's been in Wilmington since 1901. If you indulge me, I just have a little thing I'd just like to read, and then I can explain kind of why I'm here tonight.
Sounds good.
All right. So on July 30th, 1733, Henry Price, a Boston merchant, authorized to constitute one or more regular lodges by the Premier Grand Lodge in London, chartered the first duly constituted lodge in the New World. On the basis of this precedence, the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts was established. It now holds the distinctions of being the third Grand Lodge in the world and the oldest in the Western Hemisphere. Since then, Freemasonry has spread across the country and around the world. In doing so, it attracted some of the most notable figures, including founding fathers Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and Paul Revere. 13 other U.S. presidents, Arthur Mark Twain, and Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. Today's men of accomplishments, such as astronaut and Senator John Glenn, Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, and NFL Hall of Famer and New England Patriot John Hanna. Before these men achieved the greatness we recognize them for, they were all Masons. We are proud that many, many famous men have been brothers, but Freemasonry has also helped develop greatness in countless others whose names are not well known. Men who have made their families, workplaces, and communities better because of their association with our fraternity. And though there are great differences between these men, they have come from every country, religion, race, background, and opinion. Whether famous or not, they are united by Freemasonry's teachings of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Friendship Lodge has continued this tradition in the town of Wilmington since 1901. For over 116 years, Friendship Lodge has been a part of the Wilmington community. Over 80% of our membership lives in Wilmington. We are a true community lodge. In essence, Wilmington is Friendship Lodge. I'm here tonight to talk to you about several community programs that we have at Friendship Lodge. The first is our HELP program. It's an acronym for Hospital Equipment Loan Program. This program was established by 15 lodges within the surrounding communities, and basically what it does is we loan out hospital equipment to the community, whether it be a walker, a hospital bed, or a wheelchair. And all of this is done as a benefit to the community at large. And all we ask in return when the equipment is taken is that it's returned so that we may take the equipment, refurbish it, and give it back out to the public. Everything that we received through the HELP program is all given by donations. Right now, the program is run out of a location in Woburn at 500 West Cummings Park in Woburn, and it's generally open every Saturday from 9 to 12. And again, Friendship Lodge is one of the founding members of that group. Also, in Friendship Lodge here in Wilmington, we have we have a handicap ramp program. It's the only kind of that exists in Massachusetts and basically anywhere. What started out as one ramp that was donated to the lodge 15 years ago has turned into over 40 ramps that we put out throughout the Wilmington and surrounding communities. And we do this as a complete benefit to the community. We ask nothing in return, only that once the ramp is done, is no longer of use, that we get calls so we may retrieve the ramp, fix it, repair it, whatever it needs to be done, and put it back out to the community. Again, this is a complete community service that we do for the town of Wilmington. And the most important thing, one of the funds that's nearest dear to our heart, is our Angel Fund. The Angel Fund was originally established by a group back in 1998 out of Orleans, Massachusetts, and it's been adopted by all the Masonic lodges in Massachusetts and throughout New England. And what the Angel Fund was established for is to reach out to the communities, to the schools, to the administrators, the teachers, the nurses, the guidance counselors, and to let us know if there's any child in need, whether that need be a pair of glasses, hearing aid, clothing, books, a safe place to live, food, whatever it may be. If we have the funds available, we will make sure that that need is taken care of. So I am here tonight to let the school committee know that Friendship Lodge is here for the children of Wilmington. Sorry. It touches my heart because we've always been here for Wilmington and we always will be, because the children are the future of Wilmington, and we want to make sure if any child needs something that we are here for them. So I just want to, it's just a bit emotional because I know Wilmington's a proud town, but there are kids that are out there that do need our assistance, and we want to make sure that the word is spread and that we're able to help those who need it. And also, with that being said, if anyone's interested in finding out more about Friendship Lodge and who we are and what we do, on Saturday, October 21st, from 9 to 3, Friendship Lodge will be conducting an open house with the remaining other Masonic lodges in Massachusetts, opening our doors to the public, so the public may come in and see our lodge, see what our lodge actually looks like, and to meet a Mason and find out who we are and what we do. On that day, we'll also be setting up a couple of ramps in front of the building to show people what our ramps really look like and how easy we can set them up in any situation. So anyone who needs a ramp, we can provide one for them. Then also, we will be conducting our own help program in Wilmington. So if anybody in the Wilmington community needs something, if we have it in our building, we will gladly loan it out to them with only the promise that they return it so that we may give it back out to those in need. So again, I appreciate you allowing me to come here tonight and present. It's my honor to come back to this committee, which I served on many years ago, and I still have many friends that are here today, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Let me ask you, you gave us some information at the beginning of our meeting, so certainly haven't had a chance to review it, but I assume contact information, if one of our administrators or teachers can identify a child.
So the information that's provided in there is about the Angel Fund in general, but if anyone needs any assistance, all they need to do is call Friendship Lodge at 32 Church Street, really right down the street. They can call myself, they can call my number, I'll even give you my cell phone number, you can call me, email me, come visit our website and just send an email and let us know, and we will reach back out and make sure the child gets the assistance that they need.
If there's anybody in the the television viewing audience, would you like to give out a contact number?
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing before I do that is, one thing I want everyone to know is that whatever assistance is given to the child or the family, one thing that we ask is that the child and family never know where the money comes from. Because that's what we do as Masons. It's not about the glory, it's not about the honor. It's about making sure that the community is taken care of and that we're doing our part to make this place a better world. So, with that said, anybody who wants to contact me, my email is master@friendshiplodge.com, or you can call me. My cell phone number is 978-408-7937. And if anyone has any further questions, again, you can reach us via the website or just come right down the street at 32 Church Street.
Any questions, comments from the membership?
I just want to thank you for presenting tonight, because there's so many valuable things the Masons do, and they're not always the first to be thought of. But I do know that there's a lot of help within our community that you and your lodge members do, and I thank you for coming and presenting tonight
Thank you.
to get the word out. I really do.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Comments?
I would thank you as well, Mario. Thank you to you and to all the members, all the Masons in the lodge for everything that they do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
Mario.
Have a great night. Thank you.
All right. Our next order of business is a presentation by our data and assessment specialist. Paul, do you want to introduce?
I'd like to introduce Jen White, Data and Assessment Specialist. Jen's here to explain her role, the role she plays in the Wilmington Public Schools.
Oh, it came up right away. That's not, that doesn't often happen.
Love it when it works, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm really excited to be able to tell you a little about the role, and also to be able to field some questions from you, because this is a really fun position to have, because you get to see some of the awesome work that goes on in the district from the teachers, the administrators, and from the students. So it's really exciting. So I thought I would go through a couple of slides and explain the role and then field some questions. But first, I want to tell you, because I know everybody wants to know, that MCAS data, we found out, is going to be released on the 16th, internally embargoed within the district, and then publicly on the 18th. So we're pretty close. And I know that Paul said that he is going to have some information out on the 18th.
I hope to get the school committee some information on the 18th prior to it going public.
Yep. This is all tentative dates from the state, so if anything changes, we'll let you know as soon as we hear. Okay? So the core of this role is getting everyone in the district who needs it the right data at the right time. And the goal is to improve student learning. So there's a lot of data that you can get that's not really helpful. This role is about really understanding what data is needed and getting that data to people so that they can use it. There's a couple of different types of district data that often get confused for a role like this. So specifically, what I do is around instructional data. So you use instructional data to understand how well students are learning, how well we're teaching, and where we need to improve. the performance management piece of this is how efficiently and effectively are we doing that? Some districts include student and teacher demographic data management, which is data that has to be reported to the state that's related to our receiving funding, such as everything from teacher attendance and student attendance to suspension rates, all of that. That is not a part of my role. That is done by Trish Volp, who manages Aspen, and then Dana Burnham. And Dana also helps me in my role to manage a lot of the instructional issues, so she's multi-talented. Now, how does this all fit into, sorry about that. How does this all fit into the way that I interact with people in the district? So if you have the district data, the district leadership team, they are essentially having a strategic plan that's driving what they're doing. And within this strategic plan, they have goals. And they're running a series of on-track, off-track meetings throughout the year, trying to understand, well, how well are we progressing towards this plan that we've laid out in our specific goals. So within that, some of it is always about, finance and safety and other operational pieces. But around the actual student achievement piece, you need information to know how are we trying to improve the student achievement in our district? What are our priorities? And so that's where my role comes in, which is figuring out how do we improve student achievement, and within what needs to be improved, what are we prioritizing this year based on what we know we can accomplish, what we really need to do. So the two key areas for driving student achievement are around the student learning gaps, understanding where are our kids specifically struggling and which kids, and then the other side of it is the instructional gaps. So that's either what are we not teaching, as in parts of the standards, state standards that we're not instructing on, or maybe we're teaching it, but it's not clicking with the kids, and we need to be aware of that. So figuring out what those student learning gaps are and those instructional gaps, that's the role that I drive. And to do it, there's a bit of a data cycle that's running on in the background. And the first piece is you need data in order to figure out the student learning gaps and the instructional gaps. But then the question is, data on what? So the state, right, because we're a public school, we teach the standards. So our data needs to be about the standards. It needs to reflect how well are we teaching what we as a school district are expected to teach. So in order to explain that, we have to first understand the standards, which have recently changed, right? And then we have to figure out a way to assess them. And I don't just mean, high school midterms or end of year. I mean, after you teach a lesson on Thursday, did it work, right? Did the kids get it? So it's not just about like the big picture at the end of the year. It's about in every moment of all the effort that we're all putting forward, are kids getting it? Are we helping them to grow academically? And so it's what does good quality assessment look like? So that we can get good quality data to use on the standards that we're supposed to be teaching. So knowing that, once you know what you're supposed to be teaching and what mastery looks like from the students, you can think about your curriculum and instruction, right? Which is the work that curriculum leaders, teacher leaders, principals, coaches, teacher leaders, that's the work that they're all doing. Now, the way that my role fills into all of this is, as all of them are working on those pieces of standards, curriculum, assessment, and instruction, which I'm integrated into and understanding what they're doing, you got to figure out how do you pull the data out of that of how the kids are doing. So I'm over kind of on this side here, helping people recognize that they're planning their instruction, they're teaching it, then they're checking to see how it worked, daily, weekly, monthly, just constantly asking, is this working, is this working? And then they're collaborating with each other to share best practices, basically like, hey, the way that I taught this writing lesson, it worked. The kids really got it. Or, the way I taught this, it didn't fly. Do you have any ideas? So it's really that dialogue between teachers and between principals and specialists in curricular areas to understand what are we doing that's working and not working, so that we can be clear on our student learning gaps and our instructional gaps, and we can just continually improve by filling them over time. And sometimes we try and it doesn't work, and sometimes we try and just hit it out of the park, and it's pretty exciting. So my role is basically helping to connect all of these puzzle pieces all the way down from the work that the teachers are doing on a daily basis in their Is My Daily Instruction Working, all the way up to making sure that, that the goals that we're setting in our strategic plan are realistic. Of course, with this comes the culture, vision, and accountability piece of this is hard work. It's tiring for anyone in any job, in any field, to be constantly saying to themselves at the end of every day, reflectively, did what I do make sense? And how does what I need to do tomorrow need to be different based on how today went? So another piece of my role is always being in the background, reminding people to just take a breath and to just recognize that we are not doing 10 things. This is the thing that we need to accomplish now. Let's focus on it and get it going well, and then we can take care of the other pieces. So the major shifts that naturally come out as a part of this role are historically, particularly let's say the shift started coming out some in the 80s and even more in the 90s, was moving the school leadership from a more operational role to a more instructional leadership role. So I'm sure that you see this all the time, but it's out of the building management and into understanding what is the curriculum instruction, what are kids getting and what they aren't. And as a principal, being able to name the kids in your school who need help in fourth grade ELA in writing. And so that's one of the big shifts that comes out of this. The second is, so standards are really a lot of information for a teacher to learn. It's a lot. And especially when they've just changed, it's really confusing as a teacher to know, what does rigor look like? For example, if we're talking about kids understanding division with remainders, do they need to understand that if you have, say, an extra book that doesn't fit on the bookshelf, as in a remainder of 1 in a problem, that you need 13 bookshelves instead of 12? Do they need to get that in, 5th grade or 4th grade? Where is this coming out? And so part of what this role does is help people dig into the standards to really understand at what grade level is this nice to have versus absolutely necessary. The next piece is teaching in silos versus the collaborative instruction. So it's really easy. Has everyone heard the term teaching in silos? Yeah, it's really easy as a teacher to sometimes you just want to close your door and just get it done. But the thing is that that's not the most efficient way to help kids, right? Sometimes you need to do a cross-classroom grouping because you've got 3 kids who are struggling with a specific area of, let's say, fluency within reading, and another teacher has 3 kids, and you don't need to help them in a small group of 3. You can do a small reading group of 6. So if you combine classrooms, you can have those 6 kids with 1 teacher, and then you can have maybe 6 kids who are on the higher end with another teacher getting help, right? And then other teachers working with the kids in the middle in different areas, right? And so it really comes together if you are more efficiently able to look at how your teachers are collaborating around helping kids instead of just kind of focusing on their own world. Another thing is that there are good ways to teach certain things that work for kids, and there's other ways that are just not as effective. And as people build their specialties in their own instructional areas, it's really important for them to share this information. And teachers don't always have time to talk, often have time to talk during the day and share this. So routinizing the process of teachers as experts in their field, sharing what works and doesn't work, really helps the instruction to become more efficient in helping kids. And then the last piece is culture, satisfied with the status quo or a culture of continuous improvement. So this one is a little bit tricky in that a lot of times what happens with data is when you walk into a school district who is maybe newer to using data, everyone is trying to work really hard and improve things, but there also tends to be a little bit of but we're doing okay, like we're doing it. But then when you start to get really good quality data, all of a sudden you become way more aware of exactly what needs to be improved on. And you have all this information, you have a lot of ideas, and it sparks this new sort of energy. And it leads to, and this term is really popular in business as well, healthcare, et cetera, a culture of continuous improvement where people are like, we know what we need to do, let's prioritize and get on with it, and just continually going through that. And there's a different energy to that culture than the culture of more of the status quo, let's just maintain and keep on keeping on. And part of this role is just recognizing that that is what comes out of using data and helping to carry that energy to actually have an impact on student achievement. So the core tools that really come from this role, basically what do? I help with goal setting and then performance management, checking on how we're doing with those goals. And this is so nicely stated by Rob Gear, who's a really great expert in data, instructional data use, the data quality, the data use capacity, and the data culture of the district. Those three areas are the core areas of PD that people, that I deliver on. In the background, I'm figuring out how to collect data, store it, manipulate it, how to more efficiently score assessments, because that's really boring for people. So how to get that done more efficiently, get the right reports in people's hands so that they don't need to be worrying about that as much on their own. And then the best practices in assessment design, so that's getting the right data. Standards alignment, so that's making sure that we understand when our data tells us that the kids aren't getting something that we are teaching, maybe our alignment to the standards and our instruction is off, so we need to shift it a little. So making sure that actually gets back from the data to how the teachers are going through teaching it the next time they try. Curricular planning, so being aware of changes to our curriculum that the data indicates that we need to make. For example, maybe kids entering 5th grade already get how to do the long division, and they don't really need it as much as we thought that they did. So we can spend less time on it, use that time for some other skill. And then the last piece is the quality of instruction, what's working really well and what's not. So in the background, I'm helping to define the expectations around these areas and then routinizing the accountability around them, as in making sure that it's really easy to sometimes just not want to deal with any of this. And so in the background, I'm part of my role is to be like, nope, results. Like we actually need, if we're gonna do this, it actually has to have an impact. And if it's not working, let's stop and figure out what we should be doing instead. So 2 examples of how this all comes together. I see this all the time, that schools are often trying to improve too many things at the same time. And leaders really struggle to be deeply enough involved in instruction because there's so many fires to put out that are not related to instruction and learning. So the solution is focus on less and do it better. So I'll just give you a minute to look at this. So in my role, conversation I would have with the principal would be, rather than trying to, let's say, improve ELA and math drastically at the same time in 1 year, we might say, actually, let's look at math, and specifically, let's look at special education math performance. I'm just pulling this out as an example. And then what data do we need to figure out what we need to improve? And then how do we prioritize our next steps? What are we going to do? And let's just be okay with the fact that this year, we're not going to tackle everything about math that we want to improve, and we're not going to tackle ELA or science or social studies or anything else. It's going to be, of course, that stuff is going to be improving in the background, but this is the thing that we're not letting go of and that we're really checking to make sure that we make some gains. Another example is from the teacher perspective. When you assign writing to a child, you feel so obligated to report back to them through feedback on every aspect of their writing. You're putting in commas where they didn't put commas, you're making a note of this was a good introduction, make this adjustment to your thesis statement. There's all kinds of comments that you as a teacher want to share with a child. However, a lot of this record keeping, all teachers have is check plus or A- over B+. And that's not really helpful when you're trying to figure out how to target your support to a student. So again, the solution, analyze less and do it better. I'll give you a second to look at this. I know the font is small, I'm sorry. So my role with a leader, helping them to plan a workshop like this for a group of teachers, which would normally occur during either planning time or on a CIT day or a grade level meeting time, would be, let's look at the skills that the grade level is working on now around writing and over the next couple of months, and understand them from a lower developmental to a higher developmental perspective. And then let's look at some writing samples to figure out how are our kids doing? And what are some of the core areas that we are seeing that they're not doing as well on? And where they really are doing a fabulous job, the kids. And that will help us to think about what we need to focus on in our writing instruction. And then to consider how to group kids across classrooms or within a classroom to focus on some of these areas of writing. And then to talk about the best practices for specific writing skills. So let's say if we're in the beginning of the year, we're going to be working a lot with kids who are coming up with the relevant answers to questions that they're being asked, and who are maybe reading something and summarizing it, but not really getting at the question that they're being asked. But we're going to be maybe doing less work with, let's say, precision vocabulary, which is less of a priority at that time during the year. So part of my role is helping teachers to recognize that even though all of this is on your mind, this is the stuff that we need to deal with at this point during the year. And it's okay that you're not dealing with all these other pieces, and focus your feedback and your support to the kids who need the help over here. So that's kind of how all these pieces fit together within this role. And I'd love to hear any questions that people have.
Yes, MJ.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
As we've been building professional learning communities, does this all play within those
Totally.
groups?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that where most of that collaboration takes
much.
place?
So much of it,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
I have some questions.
Jen?
How are you getting this information out to teachers? Were you working with the building principals mostly,
I
and then
work
doing
mostly.
PD? What's that look like? How are the teachers getting to benefit from this?
That's a good question. So I work primarily with either the principals, or I work with people who are leading specific departments. So we have K-5 math and ELA instructional coaches, and then the CTLs in the high school. So most of my work will be with them as the leaders, because they know where they are trying to drive their department. So I'll help them sort out what is the data that you need and actions that you need to take to help your students, and what does a meeting with teachers look like, or a PD with teachers look like, to help the teachers get that work done. Sometimes I'll go to those PDs and I'll be a support in the room, but part of a role like this is not to be the person who is doing the work. It's to be sort of a trainer in the background, building the capacity of the district to do this work on their own, so that as in the cycle of continuous improvement, as the leadership gets stronger and stronger at driving the use of instructional data, I can shift a little bit to, let's say, help them then work on the quality of the intervention programming, or some other aspect, let's say the integration of social and emotional data with academic data. So that basically I'm building the capacity of the leadership team to drive this work within the district, rather than actually sitting down one-on-one with teachers on a regular basis and going over all this data. That said, I do that sometimes, especially if there's a teacher who's just like out there and they really want to get ahead. Great, but a lot of the work is a capacity building role.
Can I go again?
Yes, you may.
So you said collecting the data and then manipulating the data. Are you doing that with all the data? Are you doing that with
We prioritize which data
some
we
of the
need to
data?
look
So
at.
which of that data are you prioritizing?
Well, so we generally take MCAS data to get a sense of the bigger picture of where things are. And then we have different data for different grade spans. So for ELA, K-5, we have the BAS data, the Fund Simpanel, and we also have Foundations data. And both of these are new data sources for the district. They're just in the past, really, 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's our primary data for the lower grades. There is occasionally some writing samples that we look at, but not as much. For math, we have the Envisions data, which is really we're really nicely settling into that. At the middle school, the Envisions is in the second year. And then they primarily have looked at writing data for the middle school in ELA. And then in the high school level, the ELA department has, in the past couple of years, been administering benchmarks 3 times a year. And those are include a writing component. And then for math, I generally meet with the CTL because he has data that, there's so many different math courses. There's different data that different teachers use. So we discuss which of that data is most salient at the time. This year, Algebra 1 for 9th grade is one of the strongest focus for the high school math. Okay. And then I do some work in science. A lot of it is understanding the bigger picture of science and looking at it from a comparative year perspective to see which specific strands within science we're struggling with the most, which would reflect probably a instructional alignment gap. And then we know that we might need to focus a little bit more on that specific area of, say, physics or biology. And there's been some very clear patterns. And then within all of this data, we also look at subgroups. So specific subgroups of kids who may be struggling more or less, or classrooms to understand how do we go in and target to help the kids. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can I ask another? Sorry.
You have the floor when you...
I don't know if I want to, but what are you, I guess, I don't want to ask what you're seeing as the major like learning gaps or instruction, but what are you seeing as sort of, you said algebra, like at the high school you're focusing on that. What are the areas of like,
Sure.
these are my top priorities for the next 4 months?
So, okay, so I think the smartest decision that the district has made in the past couple of years is getting Envisions in place, and then getting for K-5, and then also then for the middle school, and then getting the ELA assessments in place, and getting Reader's Workshop moving, because all of that is really providing a lot more consistency and a lot more clarity around the standards for teachers that they didn't have. So definitely for the next 4 months, it's working on those pieces. I think Envisions is off to a pretty solid start, and people are really just kind of practicing what they've wrapped their heads around over the past 2 years, but ELA is a little bit more new. Yeah. We're still working on refining the quality of the data that we're collecting and understanding, what are we teaching through the Reader's Workshop. So that's been a big part of my role, is making sure that we're really getting clear on what's going well for teachers and students and what we need to support them with. In the middle school level, I'm doing less work right now, and that's because the demand in the K-5 is pretty high. And then at the high school level, I do a fair amount of work with the ELA department because they are really, really trying to figure out the new standards and the rigor within ELA, which has shifted a bit over the past couple of years, to really, I know that writing within the high school has been a struggle, and they're really trying to figure that out. How do we improve writing overall? And I think what's really nice is that as they are developing a more clear understanding of the writing needs of students at the high school, they are going to be able to replicate what they learn across subjects, because you have writing in every subject, so they'll be able to share that information with their colleagues. So right now, a lot of my work at the high school is just helping them to get more clear on what is really going on with what the kids need around writing. And then once they figure out how to deal with it, then thinking about the replication. But that's a bit longer than 4 months. Yeah.
Are you hoping to, as part of this role, to sort of provide some consistency, like side to side, so like Shawsheen, Woburn Street, like is there
Absolutely.
a way, are they all doing the same assessments? Are you then able to look at it and say, oh, this is so, is that some of the work that you're able to do through this?
And everybody isn't at this point always doing exactly the same thing, because there are some different needs in different programs. But the thing is that you do stop and look and see what's working, and sometimes you realize that actually this assessment is providing some great data and that one's not. Or the timing of this assessment is really working for teachers and kids, and this one is not. So let's shift things around a little bit. But in the end, I think things are already pretty consistent between the two schools, and I think that we're continuing to improve that consistency.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Good.
MJ?
Oh, I have more, but no.
Quick one, I'm going to tie Mr. Gallagher into this.
Yeah.
How do you two work together with regards to everything that you're collecting in the different grade levels? How do you work collaboratively with the curriculum team leaders and with Jen in driving these, these thoughts and in, you know, problem solving. What's your role? Want to see how you fit into the piece.
Well, I think a few things, having Jen, I think coming into this district and having someone like Jen is helpful. In my previous experience, we kind of did all this on, pulling the data and looking at assessments and working with teachers. So I think for us, when we collaborate, she has a lot of, I think, the data, and she can take a lot of the data for the district and all the different grade levels in the different schools. And her and Dana Burnham do a great job in kind of condensing it. For me, I think we have bi-weekly meetings with, secondary principals and administration. We also meet with the elementary principals, the CTLs. And I think my role is more kind of the ground level of, looking at the district data and then really working with the principals on developing the faculty meetings, kind of plan of attack on, what are we going to focus on, some of the needs of the teachers, because then I think it's more of the instructional leadership piece and working, with the principals and supporting them in their role as, working on closing the achievement gap. One of the big things I think we did this year that I'm really happy with is as we wrote our goals this year, from all the principals, the elementary and the secondary, is we kind of all shared the same goals. So the, student learning goal is closing the achievement gap. Professional practice goal for 6 to 12 is continuing the curriculum work on curriculum mapping. Professional practice goal for elementary is really focusing on Reader's Workshop and working with teachers to enhance the ELA program down at the elementary level, because as Jen said, we're feeling pretty good about Envision's math after 3 years, and the teachers, haven't forgot about that. They're really looking at the online resources and then also the enrichment activities that come with that program. So I think that's a big focus. And then a couple of the school improvement goals that we're all focused on, grades 6 to 12, is focusing on the MARC program and the bullying program, research-based. And at the elementary level, we're focusing on, school improvement goal is PBIS across the district. And then the last goal collectively, especially after last year for school improvement district-wide for all the principals and administration, including central office, we're really looking at kind of spreading the good word, the good news, promoting student achievement, recognizing student achievement, recognizing teachers. So I think all of that, Jen and I work very well together.
But you've created action plans for those goals, correct?
Yes,
That you're
yeah,
working to.
for
Okay.
all the district administrators. So I think one of the pieces, and and I wouldn't say a criticism, but a concern, I think, from the teachers to the principals is we have all these initiatives out there. How are we going to do all this? And I think working, with all the principals and district leaders is really getting a focus. Let's do a few things well, and let's all pull in the same direction. So, and I think the goal setting this year, from the feedback we received from our administrators, they were really appreciative of us really all collectively focusing on a lot of the same goals. And when you're looking at the action steps, for each school, it's going to be a little bit different because there's different challenges at all the different schools, but I think we're all kind of moving in the right direction. So, I mean, I love working with the principals and central office personnel because I've kind of been there. So when I hear some of the concerns or, how are we going to accomplish this, I have some, I think, experience working with principals. And so for me, that's been really rewarding and being a supportive role.
But I'm sure you're also very helpful to the curriculum team leaders, though, too, because I
Yeah.
think that's another big leadership share, along with the
Correct.
administrators.
Because
in
if
that.
every school has different challenges, and when you're working in a high school, there's 8 different departments. So you can go to one department and, they're in one place and another department's in another place, and then kind of.
I just think it's so vital
experience
with regards to the data that you're pulling and the path that we need to take. I think, and I mean, and I think that's the great thing
It's
about
great.
professional
I mean,
learning
that's-
communities, the
I think
collaboration.
Yeah, that's the exciting piece of it. I think, I guess my glass is always half full with me. So all the new changes with technology and the standards and how everything's changing, for me, it's an opportunity to continue, to change and regenerate and get some energy. And so working with the faculty, listening to the concerns, but also supporting them and allowing them to make mistakes and try new things. And it may not work out well, this first time, but, we'll keep working together. So
Wonderful.
I think Jen and I have, it's been great, a great learning experience, for me, because we never had, a data person for the district to really pull a lot of that data, make it a lot more useful district-wide.
And for me, Sean, really, any coaching that I'm doing with people, everything's filtered through Sean, because I'm not aware if there are issues outside of academics as much going on in the building. And so when I come to him and say, this is what the data shows, this is what I'm thinking in terms of priorities, he's like, this looks great, cut it back by 20%, because they're also dealing with X, Y, Z. And, he really helps me to prep and think through a lot of the work that I do with whoever I'm working with. So it's, it's really collaborative.
Great.
Yeah,
It's
he's really-
just a better idea, because I've never seen the merge, there's a lot of hands in that collaboration process, and that's never been a question I've had before, so I thank you very much for answering it.
Great.
Do you also do the instructional rounds? Like, are you in
Sometimes.
that, or mostly hearing about it afterward? Kind of?
Sometimes I need to go in because I need to walk into a classroom, and, generally when I walk into a classroom, I can immediately tell how standards-based it is. And numbers are only numbers, right? So sometimes you just need a visual on it, and you can say, okay, so it looks like these numbers are a little bit higher than they were last year. What's going on? And you walk into the classroom and you say, wow, like this is really tightly aligned to the standards, and there's a lot of rigor going on in here, and it helps you see year to year a difference as people are working so hard to improve. So sometimes I do that, but at the same time, particularly working part-time right now, I'm not in the classrooms as much, but I do have my eyes and ears out because everyone I work with is in the classrooms, so I'm asking a lot of questions about that. So, but the work is really in the background more than, it's not like I'm not in the classroom working with teachers ever, really.
Right, and so when you get this MCAS data, you're gonna look at it, and then look at all the other data and say, what's going on
Let's go
here?
look at
Level
these
1,
rooms.
level 2, why is this happening? Are those sorts of, I'm assuming those are conversations that are going on.
Yeah, and you can usually see in the data, you're like, okay, something is going fabulous here, and we probably should replicate it. Let's go find out what it is.
Good,
Yeah.
awesome, thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm good.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
all that
all very
information.
much.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on. Now we're going to enjoy the presentation by our Director of Student Support Services, and Christine Murray.
I'm going to apologize for not having a fancy picture-filled presentation like Jen. I clearly need to get up to speed with PowerPoint. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I figured we would maybe just do an overview, maybe just push present, of kind of where things are at and the loose plan for the year, and then Christine's going to talk about some of the initiatives that I think we keep hearing, like Mark and some of the other programs, and then I figured you have a copy of the PowerPoint, so if you have any questions, just kind of jump in. That's good, okay. So there's a couple of things I kind of wanted to hit on, the first being kind of looking at district programs, because that seems to be a question I get frequently, given the changes over the last couple of years in the programs that we have. as well as some of the initiatives that we have going on. And then I'll talk a little bit right at the end about the coordinated program review, which is coming up this year, just some additional information about that. I wasn't sure if everybody was clear kind of about what is in the Office of Student Support, so here's just kind of a general list. For me, it's really, for us really, it's really more the bottom one that's the most important, is being kind of a resource for the district. That's really my goal. If I have any goal for the whole year, there's certainly compliance goals and making sure we're in line with regulations. But my real goal is to make sure that the office is perceived by the staff, the district, the community, as a resource for everybody. So teachers need help with something, they need help on a student, parents need help, community agencies are needing help. Kind of, we need to be the hub for that, kind of in our view. So while all the other things are definitely important, that for me is kind of the paramount concern that I have for the year and priority that I have for the year, we have for the year. In terms of who is in our office, we have a number of student support staff, obviously, that are in the schools as well, that are housed in the schools, but these are the folks that are actually inside our office. The most important people on that list are Peggy, Kathy, and Lynn down at the bottom, because nothing gets done unless, if they were not kind of running the show. So they organize my whole life, Christine's whole life, and kind of help us tremendously. But we have a number of BCBAs, our team chair people. We have a few school psychologists that are in the office. We have a number that are also in the schools, as well as some guidance people. School adjustment counselors are in the schools. Christine and I are both there, as well as our new BCBA, Dr. Jill Spiro and Adam Harlow, who everybody is probably the most familiar with. So in terms of goals, right, I talked a little bit about being resource focused. There's a number of things that I think we need to do long-term, and then some things we need to really look at kind of more close in the next few months, definitely leading into our coordinated program review. So when we look at, you know, making sure that we're meeting timelines is certainly my main focus as it relates to special education, because I think we have some inconsistency around the paperwork piece as it relates to special ed, depending on the school and the level and the building. And I think that's just been a historical thing. So I'm kind of working to change that so that we have a little bit more of consistency in roles, as well as who's responsible for what, and kind of doing that will help us clarify the timeline for, you know, the evaluation process and IEPs being generated on certain dates, making sure that there's maybe less hands, so to speak, in the IEP process, and we can control it a little bit more from our office. So there's some things that I'm able to take care of kind of now, then there's some things that are going to require a little bit more adjustment, given the district has had a number of changes over the last few years, and I'm not looking to add to those changes, but definitely want to make sure that we're following regulation and the timelines, which is very important. I think the other big piece, and I've already been having these conversations, is looking at the kinds of IEPs that we're generating. We need to really be moving towards them being individualized. And while everybody perceives them to be, there's a lot of times where we get IEPs that can be very general, not specific enough to really drive any instruction for a student, and definitely not specific enough necessarily to make it a measurable goal that you're going to see change kind of over time. And that is probably in part due to the different people that are creating IEPs in the district. So those two issues are tied together a bit, the timeline piece, the quality of the IEPs, and I think we have staff that are unbelievably trained and have great skills as it relates to identifying what students' needs. I think it's translating that into the paperwork. That is the challenge always for an IEP process. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt, but you touched upon a point. I know in the IEP process, the proposed IEP is not typically seen by the parent previously as it used to be, and now is handed at the IEP meeting. And I do know that parents have stated it becomes very difficult to be a part of that discussion process when you really haven't reviewed and crunched the information of which staff is sharing. Is there any opportunity to go back to the old way where parents have at least 48 hours to review what's being proposed so that they can be prepared for that IEP discussion?
Right.
Especially when it's so limiting with staff involvement, with pulling people
So
from classrooms.
technically, any services or goals or plans that are made for a student at the IEP meeting, for the IEP, need to be actually done as part of a team. And so
Right.
while that draft comes in, the draft should really be a framework of, let's say, the assessment data, the
Right,
background.
right.
And the goals should really be discussed at the meeting. The service delivery has to be discussed at the meeting.
Of
I
course.
think what has happened in a lot of districts, not just Wilmington, is that in an effort to not make these meetings kind of go on, they generate draft goals inside the document, call it a draft. And what happens is I think sometimes parents feel as though that's the proposal, that there's no necessarily discussion
Right,
regarding it.
right, okay.
So what parents are able to have ahead of time is certainly all the evaluations. And I've really tried to talk to some of the IEP teams about making sure that that draft is really just kind of your thoughts about what is happening and not parents feel as though they're being handed what the goal is going to be.
Right, right.
And I think part of that is kind of a clarity of the people running the meeting to kind of explain that to the parents.
But I think it's
Yeah.
helpful in seeing what is being proposed by the
Yeah.
staff, because it's a learning process for these parents. And
Yeah.
in that discussion, which is where the real, true learning is, to this is why we're proposing it. Your parents
Yeah.
at least have can come
So
in with
here's
questions.
the problem with, like, say, let's say handing a draft ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
is by law, this discussion around those services has to occur at the meeting. So even if it's intended to be, let's say, a draft,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes out ahead of the meeting, it seems as though according to the state, that we would be predetermining the services and the placement of that child by having it created before the meeting.
I just think it's.
I know
I
what
just
you're
find it a
saying.
little.
It's
not
it's
an even
counterintuitive.
playing field for
Yep.
people who want to research,
Yeah.
you know.
In a perfect world, right, the state
Right.
wants you to sit down and generate all of the goals and objectives together as a team, which could take 4 hours.
Well, right.
Right, I mean,
I
that's
just
the
hate-
downside to it.
Right, it's seeing parents coming back
I
saying, look, I
know.
need another IP meeting so I can discuss.
Right.
You know,
right.
it's, I just thought.
Right.
Time saving, but I understand
Yeah,
the.
because
yeah.
individual service providers, I guess is what I'm saying, can't actually propose the goal. The team, in theory, proposes the goal and proposes the placement, even though you may, let's say, have an SLP say, these are the things that we need to work on. But the discussion around that is where the team weighs in on that decision. I understand.
You know,
from
just
a-
preparing
it's a
for
lot.
that discussion
It
and
is,
that, you know what I
yeah.
mean? That was
Yeah.
all I was gonna interject. Sorry to
Oh,
interrupt you.
no, that's okay.
But they, sorry, can I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
But they can still, they see all the evaluations ahead of
They
time.
do.
So
They have
they're
everything
walking
ahead of
in,
time.
Having read through everything.
Right, but not being from an educational background, sometimes in seeing what's being proposed, and, you know, it prepares for that conversation, why you're proposing this goal, what's the, you know, how is, you know.
But even more dangerous if you're not from an educational background and you go in and it's already proposed goals.
Right.
That people have sort of decided without you're part of that team.
It's sort of like, sort of like a foundation to start from. It's not, you know
I
what I mean? It's
know.
not sort of like, oh, this is
Yeah.
all, that, because the discussion, you're right, discussion does have to, but it's ensuring parents have a opportunity
Yeah.
to think about what is being proposed and having that discussion with all hands on deck, at
And
that
it
time.
is hard in the group setting. I mean, that's, I think, why sometimes people try to generate them ahead of time, just as for a point of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I think it ends up in the document literally just because of the logistically we use eSped. So that's kind of the easiest way versus having kind of handouts of Word documents per se. But ahead of time, we would be in big trouble.
No, okay, no worries.
Yeah.
But thank you for
No, but I understand
clarifying.
what you're saying. Yep.
Thank you.
So the other big piece, kind of what we've looked at, and this is kind of where Jen White comes in for me in terms of her role, is looking at our in-district programs. And, Jen and I met kind of right out of the gate of me taking over this position and looking at where are our MCAS data in relationship to our programs in the district. So that it gave me kind of a starting point for where the work that needed to be done is, aside from the things that I already know kind of based on last year. So for me, that is a huge piece for her role and how I would utilize her is looking at our data as it relates to our programming for kids, looking at the differences between kids that are in certain programs or an inclusion model or at a level or sides of town, kind of looking it up which way and backwards, and she pulls all that. So that's very helpful for me. Christine's going to talk a little bit about SEL programming in a second. The other big piece for me is making sure that CPAC is for me, that's the parent voice of our entire department, and they're the resource for parents and should be the first stop. I certainly want us to be too, but I think it's important that working with CPAC to figure out what the parents in the community need from our department is important. So they've been great this year to work with. I thought this might be helpful. This is a breakdown of where our programs are in the district. And there's lots of names for lots of different things. The ones in blue are within a year, I would say. So the student support program at the middle school is for students that are having emotional and behavioral concerns and require kind of a soft place to land at the middle school. That started the beginning of last year. And then the Stepping Stones programs at the Boutwell and Shawshene and Stages are all new programs that started somewhere between January of this year, of 17, with Stepping Stones at the Shawshene expanding up to this year because we had students leaving Stepping Stones at the Boutwell. And so Stepping Stones is really for our little guys that are struggling, that do have an emotional disability, that have pretty significant behaviors that require kind of a much more structured setting that has very clear behavioral expectations, has a therapeutic component to it, but is really for the kids that have a little bit more externalizing behavior that require a smaller setting. That we have not had that program, and I think a lot of our kids that are kind of leaving us are leaving us early with that profile because we don't have a place necessarily for them to work on some of those skills and kind of, work on being reintegrated. Stages is an interesting program. It's actually based in a cognitive behavioral therapy model. It's really was designed off of a couple of students that were having tremendous amounts of anxiety that was keeping them from being really able to access the curriculum, but academically capable and able to kind of, otherwise inconsistently access the curriculum, and was really one of our teachers over at the Woburn Street kind of Cherie Morandi had a background working at McLean's Hospital and had some connections there, and we had talked about bringing in some very clear coaching around anxiety strategies and how to support those students in the classroom setting. So it kind of was born out of us just looking at a number of students, and it's done very well. We've come up a little bit in terms of the enrollment. That really didn't open till April of last year. Joanne was, very much on board when she took a look at kind of where we're at with the population of kids that are struggling a bit with some of their emotional regulation. And the two programs are different. Stepping Stones from Stages. Stages is much more of an inclusion model. It's intended to, and all of our programs are intended to get kids as much access to inclusion as possible. Most of the kids in Stages are included for most of the day. They have very kind of a block in the morning every day, 5 days a week, in which they do focused skills training that is really based around cognitive behavioral therapy. We actually have McLean's Hospital come in and consult to the staff a number of times over the course of the year. And I've expanded the consultation to the Stepping Stone staff as well. So although the models are not the same, the skills that they're covering for all of the staff will benefit kind of everybody. So we thought that was important. So if anybody has any questions, you can let me know. But these are, yeah, go ahead.
I do have one question.
Sure.
If you go back to,
Yeah.
the Shawshene and the Woburn Street are both at the same level.
Yes.
Have you found that you need Stages more so at the Woburn Street based on
We
enrollment?
did last year, yes,
So-
interestingly enough. That's really came out of started with 2, it ended up at 3, now we're at 4 students that are accessing the services there.
So if you had a student or two at Shawshene,
They would move.
would you move?
If they
Yes.
had a similar profile, yep, and would benefit from that model, they would essentially cross town. Much
Okay.
like, let's say, our Pathways program, which is for students that require ABA component to their programming. If, let's say, they were on the Woburn side, they would actually move and attend the program at the Shawshene.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
yep. So I did give you a description, and I'm sure you probably take a look at both of them. So in terms of the things beyond this year, we are looking at, and we have a couple of things scheduled through the office to do professional development, not only for staff. Adam Harlow's going to be actually running a behavioral strategies WU for teachers that may not have taken safety care, but need the strategies regarding de-escalation and how to intervene with a student that might be escalating and having some difficulty, but don't necessarily need the restraint training component of it. And that's running the 24th and 26th of October. At, I think 3:15, he's running that. And then Christine and I are putting together parent nights as well. I ran a number of them last year in conjunction with either the middle school or some of the other principals, depending on what the focus was. And Sean and I put together one on cyberbullying and kind of looking at all of the issues around digital citizenship last year, but we're gonna move a little bit kind of more towards like the student support area as it relates to some of the concerns. I ran an anxiety workshop for parents last year. I've gotten requests to do that again, so we'll probably run a second one. I think people are looking more for strategies versus just kind of a general overview, kind of move towards that. I think mindfulness is obviously the hot topic, but I think parents sometimes when that word is used in school are not really clear what it is. So I think running a professional development night or a night for parents as well. And then Wyatt3 training, which is just a specific test that we're going to do some training on that a lot of our special educators use, but need to definitely be maybe refreshed a bit about that training.
Can I ask you, are we still expanding on the collaborative problem-solving approach, the Ross Green program?
So I know a lot of the buildings are using that model, so there's staff at the middle school, staff at the west that use
Right.
it, the Shawshene uses it consistently.
They do, good, okay.
I know that the CPAC is also having Ross Green, we've had some difficulty nailing him down on a
Within a
date,
date,
is
yep,
my understanding, to come in and do that. But right now, we don't have any formal training to expand the model, but it's something we could look at.
Okay, because that
Yeah.
would be, I mean, we did
Yep.
pay to
Okay.
purchase that and to have staff trained in that
Yep.
model to which to share throughout the district.
Yeah, oh, so, I mean, they have been doing it within their own buildings, but we
Right.
could maybe do something a
But
little more
that, the thought
focused
was to
district-wide.
expand upon that. We have
Sure.
I think two staff who are certified
Okay,
through his program that can bring it
Train
into
others,
the, yes,
yeah.
and I'd very much, because I think
Yeah.
that, it offers another tool
Yep.
into our toolbox.
Mhm.
And I think I'm just a big fan of that
Yeah.
approach to begin with.
Yeah, great.
Especially with typical children that,
Yeah.
You wouldn't, maybe
Yeah.
struggling
You
that
did the
big.
CPS, right? Yeah,
Yep.
Christine did the CPS training.
Great.
It was
Oh,
the year
good.
before me,
Okay.
yep, yeah.
But also even maybe a parent night on that, just
Yeah.
how you can help with CPS at home, because it's not just a
And
school-based
I think
initiative.
that's key, though, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that is, you get most success in the school environment when there's parent buy-in.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And is a change of thought, approach, as to how parent approaches it. But I don't want to lose that. I think
Yeah.
it's such a vital tool to reach,
Yeah,
adults and children alike.
I
so
agree, yeah. Yeah,
It's nice to
no.
hear that CPAC one to bring them in, too.
That's
So,
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Christine's going to talk a little bit about the SEL, and PBIS, so I'm not allowed to discuss that. I'm just- And so in terms of other training, I think we need to, move towards looking at having some specialized training for some of our staff. We have, students that require specialized reading programs like Orton Gillingham and Linda Mood Bell, so we have some training happening for Linda Mood Bell within the next couple of weeks, Orton Gillingham probably into next year. And that kind of rolls into looking at our language-based programs as a whole. They are an unbelievable program in the district that saves the district a tremendous amount of money. And it's also the program that we have to keep the most current if we look at programming from K to 12 from a special ed point of view. So I think we have to take a look at where our staff are in terms of the training. We have some people that have had extensive training as it relates to either Orton Gillingham or Linda Mood Bell. But for me, it's taken an inventory of where those programs are. And I'm going to probably use a few hours of Landmark to come in and help us with that. Because I think it's important that we have a clear kind of vision, not just for this year, but going forward with that program, because it's a key program for the district to have intact. And then, the other thing, which is kind of part of what I did last year that Christine's doing this year, but also we have a connection, as well as Doreen's here, with the Wilmington Substance Abuse Coalition and the social worker that they just hired through the police department. So we have a pretty regular communication with her and them regarding kind of anything that might happen from a community point of view that would be important or affect one of our students. So that's been a brand new but very key relationship that has happened. So these are kind of the opportunities that we've had over the last few months, just to kind of summarize that. And I think the last slide is really talking about where we're going. There was for me, the information needs to get down to the schools, and I think that that's probably the most important. It's impossible for me to get to every single department meeting or every single school meeting. So what we do is we meet weekly with the team chairs. The team chairs hold community meetings, which is something that occurred a while ago, and I'm not sure over the last few years it has occurred consistently. But that's the time where the information, the regulations, kind of that consistency is going to happen down to the building level. I want to see some consistency in some of the report writing that we're doing and not have any variability across the district, and some of that is going to take some training to do that. You might have heard, I've rolled out the MCAS alt guidelines, which exist from the state, that just kind of put it in a packaged format so it's clearer in terms of, the steps to identifying a student on an alt assessment, and what kind of, how do we go ahead and identify the parents what the long-term implications of that are, and do it in a way that's formal. And then I really am looking towards trying to find a way to get all the information, the forms that we use, all of those things as a hub. So probably Google Drive is going to be the best way to do that, because again, there's variability from building to building and what forms and who's using what, and there needs to be more consistency across the district, and they need to be current, which is the other concern that I have. And I'm trying to hijack all the CIT days for all of the SPED staff, but that's not as easy as it might sound, but I did get them for the September one, so. In terms of the CPR, just a little bit of an update, they are coming, I think Sean actually mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but March 19th through 22nd, they're gonna come in January and have at least a preliminary meeting with, I think, Sean, myself, and Paul, I believe, right? It is gonna be everything, it's a full coordinated program review this year, so it's SPED, ELL, and civil rights. And at that point, they'll be doing visits at the school during the week of March 19th through 22nd. They will be interviewing staff. This presentation I had in kind of a much longer format. I did present it to not only the parent, and I think Jen came too, but also all of the special ed staff, and included a couple of other things about kind of roles, and because people need to be clear of who's responsible for what, who allocates resources in the district, and making sure that when they're interviewed by the Department of Ed, which they will be, some of them, that they're clear about who's responsible for what from a special ed point of view, or from a an ELL civil rights point of view. So part of those community meetings are going to be having those conversations going forward and sharing the information with principals so they can share it with their general ed teachers as well. So if anybody had any questions, otherwise Christina has some things to discuss.
Okay. So
Yeah, go.
how are you feeling in preparation for this? Because this is a huge undertaking.
Yep.
How
For
are
the
you feeling?
CPR?
I know I've heard, through the superintendent and Joanne, you've made, making great strides in rectifying those areas of weakness. But I just know this anxiety just builds up to that 1 week. And how are you?
I think, I think we're trying to control the things that we can. There are some things that I think that we can put in place. Let's say, for example, the MCAS alt guidelines, and making sure that the paperwork that needs to be generated and completed for a child that, let's say, we're considering an alt on, is rectified now. So that if we get to the coordinated program review, when they say, that's not, I took care of that in September. So, and there are larger things in terms of who's responsible for what that do impact people's work responsibilities. And so those are things I think Paul and I will have conversations, and Sean with the union, about what we're able to change and what we're not, without making people too uncomfortable.
Very good.
But to try to control it a bit. Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Sure.
Great. So some of our behavioral health and social emotional supports in the district. I'll talk a little bit about social emotional learning, PBIS, our behavioral health task force, and just touch a little bit on bullying procedures. So social emotional learning for me is just as important as academic learning. If kids have that base and that attitudes and skills in learning the 5 core competencies, I really think that will help them overall achieve academic success. So these competencies are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and the responsive decision-making skills, responsible. So we kind of look outside the wheel. How is this happening in the classroom? What does it look like at the school-based level? And how is it in the home and in the community? So those are the 5 core competencies for SEL. So we really want to have that safe and supportive community environment in the classroom. It's naturally weaved throughout the day. We also have explicit programs that we bring into the classroom, but really for it to be positive working relationship, we're kind of just using it throughout the day in the classroom. So looking at it specifically in our schools at the elementary and intermediate level, we're using responsive classroom at the pre-K and kindergarten level, and a lot of the social thinking curriculum, culture building in each and every school, modeling, and the PBIS implementation. At the middle school, we constantly look at our youth risk surveys, and that gives us some good data. We are beginning the Signs of Suicide Prevention Program. Alice started a lot of these initiatives last year. So we will be going out, as the middle school is going to a training in November, and then we will be implementing that as soon as we get back from that training come the winter. We are looking at the life skills program here at the middle school. We also use it at the churches at 3rd grade. We did a grant, Doreen and I and some other members, to really bring it possibly at the younger level, 4th and 5th grade level. We're waiting back to hear on that. So basically, those are prevention programs for substance abuse prevention. At the middle school and high school level, we're working on the MARC as well. Did I mention that at the middle school level too? In there. So that is a bullying and cyberbullying curriculum that is evidence-based, that was piloted last year in the spring, and it will continue into this year at the middle school and high school level. I don't know if I missed anything else. PBS, this is our 2nd year. Again, Alice got this up and running with the coach from Wadiko last year. The supports are proactive. We really want to look at the school culture to achieve social, emotional, and academic success. Each school is on an individual path, so every school might look a little different. But really, there's some amazing work being done. I think some people will be coming to school committee to talk about it. At the younger grades, we're really, using our core values and showing a song to go along with it at the younger level. They're using recognition systems for staff, then for the students, really on common, positive behavior in the hallway, in the bathroom, different aspects of their day. So it's really been great to see at each level. The Behavioral Health Task Force, amazingly, over 25 members, up to 30, 35, including a parent, volunteer, really to work on the initiatives for the district, look at our policies, bullying, substance abuse, how to involve the families and communities with all of our work. And we meet every Monday, trying to think, basically to just review any social, emotional learning and behavioral health initiatives. I think that's it. Kind of flew through mine. Does anyone have any questions?
You said you met every Monday, but it says once a month.
Yeah.
Yep, every Monday,
well,
every month, I'm sorry, once a month on Mondays. So we're meeting this Monday.
Questions, comments from the membership?
Thank you.
It was an outstanding presentation. You got your work cut out for you, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Busy. We very much appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, our next order of business is to appoint an alternate delegate to the annual business meeting this November. We have appointed MJ as our delegate. If for some unforeseen reason MJ is not able to attend, we do need to provide an alternate. Do we have anybody willing to be an alternate that is planning to attend?
Well, I think Tom and I are the only, we're
The
both
only two.
going,
The only two other ones
I
that are
believe,
not.
but
That can.
this will be my very first MASC, so
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be available.
Tom, will you be the alternate? All right. So I would move to appoint Tom Talbot, or I can't move, actually, I'm sorry. I'd accept a motion to appoint Tom Talbot as the alternate delegate to the annual business meeting. So moved, and a second, all in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, Tom. All right, and now we are on to the MASC resolutions. These are items that are being proposed by MASC. Our delegate will kind of summarize the various resolutions and We will discuss them, and we'll move on whether we will want to support or not support these resolutions. MJ, would you like to take it from here?
Yep, thank you very much, Steve. So the first resolution, Jen, I know this is your first go-around, so are you familiar with the delegate assembly that takes place at the convention?
Yeah.
Okay, I just don't want to assume, thank
No,
you.
thank you.
Okay, so the first resolution we'll be voting on at convention is the movement of the Chapter 70 funding enrollment date to March 15th. Basically, this resolution, I think, impacts smaller districts where it impacts the budgetary planning for influxes of student population. So I'm not quite sure, and maybe, Paul, you could help me, I'm not sure when the numbers have to be in, per se, but there's districts asking for the enrollment, but Chapter 70 funding to be pushed back to March 15th.
The way it currently works is the October 1st enrollment count dictates your Chapter 70 funding for the following fiscal year.
Okay.
So as an example, this October 1st enrollment number is when they're finalized and verified, drive the Chapter 70 funding for FY19.
Now, can I ask you, is there any impact with a district of our size with regards to either supporting this resolution or not? I haven't.
Our enrollment in Wilmington typically doesn't change that much from October 1st to March 1st to March 15th,
Okay.
whatever the date is typically. Frank, you don't see anything else on that? And historically, it hasn't really.
Well, the enrollment doesn't change
Yeah.
much. And I don't understand how you could use that March 15th date if you're getting the budget from the state in the end of January. So I don't see how that really works.
Then I think in saying that, and thank you for your input, I would take no position on this resolution. For the sake that I don't think it impact us, and I don't know how, I really don't know how truly relevant it is, or if it's even viable, if that is the case.
Well, let me ask you this, right, from what you're telling us, could this be hurtful to our budgeting process if they move their date?
Probably not, because when we go through the budget process, we're doing for example, the FY19 budget process. My packet, Frank and my packet went out last Friday. We start the budgeting process now. Town manager's budget message is typically the last Monday or some Monday in January. That time he has his budget kind of set and he's made his projections on Chapter 70 and so forth. And as you're aware, the town's pretty conservative. It kind of, you typically does not anticipate an increase or a very, very small increase in Chapter 70 funding. So I don't know if it would necessarily hurt. I think what Frank said, it would be interesting how they would ever be able to do the state budget, but wait till, March to have the enrollment numbers, which would drive the Chapter 70 funding. I think it affects cities
Smaller
more
districts
because,
and-
cities because they don't really finish their budget until June sometimes, the way they work. And their influx of students could
Well,
vary
this was
quite a
actually
bit.
proposed by the Framingham School Committee, so it's no surprise that they've put forth a resolution of this sort.
So is this something, as opposed to taking no position, does it make sense for us to advocate against?
I think that's it's per the discussion of the board and how.
It puts it would put the students, so people who are asking for this, like a Framingham or a Boston or Chuck, they're not getting the funding they need because they may have an influx of students. So are we just worried about Wilmington, or are we?
Well, I think my first priority is Wilmington, first and foremost, and, the will of this board and this community.
No, I understand that, but
And
if
I
it
think
doesn't
that's where my
hurt, but
perspective
if
is,
it's
though.
not going to really affect us, one way or the other, then couldn't we come together to support a district like Framingham that
We certainly
probably
could.
doesn't get the funding they need because their enrollment numbers change so drastically, I don't know. So if it doesn't hurt us, then it may not make sense to be no position, because we could come together as a school committee to support other school committees who are trying to get
This
work
is true.
right.
This is true.
I'm wondering if this is because, wasn't it Framingham that just changed from a town to a city?
Mhm.
And if this is something that is reflected because of that, that's why they wanted the change.
I also think, though, too, as Paul had mentioned earlier in the meeting, that with the influx of children coming into the United States for education from Puerto Rico, that may also play a role. I don't know, it may not, because they're coming in now as opposed to,
I mean, they do
but
have.
they also have homeless populations, too, that they also have to mitigate as well. That may be another element to this resolution,
I mean, they do have a
transient students.
high number of foreign students there, so.
So here's what I'm hearing. It's not going to, this would not help us. It would not necessarily hurt us. Correct?
Yeah, I don't see how it would hurt us, so, yeah.
All right. So I guess I'd entertain a motion from a member of the board to approve or not approve.
Are we voting on these one by one, or are we taking them all as a group?
No, they're all different resolutions, honey.
All right, well, just saying,
Yeah.
motion to support the resolutions on there, so.
Shall I, or Jen?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 1, movement of the Chapter 70 funding enrollment date to March 15th.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
MJ? All right. All those in favor? All right. That's unanimous.
Second resolution is the requirement of the circuit breaker funding, also submitted by the Framingham School Committee. Pretty much it's, Paul, you might have to kind of guide me on this one. It's with the uncertainty of the Medicaid, Medicare funding at the federal level. This circuit breaker funding resolution is to ensure schools continue to get adequate funding on special ed cost increases. My initial concern with this was that there was no verbiage with regards to advocating for this line item at being funded at 100%, which by law it's supposed to be, but never is. But I called over to MASC, and they said that because that verbiage has been on previous resolutions, that continues to be an active topic and issue for the lobbyists at the MASC level. So that will be inclusive to that. But I think it's the smaller school districts not being able to meet a certain amount of school spending, and that's why they want to kind of lower the percentage to that, if I'm correct, Paul? Is that?
In the therefore be it resolved, it talks about support the recommendation of the Foundation Budget Review Commission, and I believe the recommendation of the commission was to change the assumed in-district special ed costs from assumed 15% of students to assumed 16% of students. So what, in the Chapter 70 calculations, they take your student enrollment and assume 15% of those students are in-district special education. Frank, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
And so you get a number of students. It's not the actual number of students, it's an assumption. So 15% of your total enrollment are special ed students, and then there's a cost factor that goes along with that that gets built into the Chapter 70 amount. And I think the commission's recommendation was to, rather than assume 15%, assume 16% of the enrollment of special ed students. And I think the other piece is to increase the special ed cost rate. There's a average rate that they use on that 15% of students by various categories. I think they want to increase that to be more closely aligned to
Current
the actual
cost.
costs of special ed. I believe that's what they're trying to get at here.
I agree with you, and I think that this particular resolution certainly could not hurt and could help town of Wilmington and every other town.
I certainly, I align with that opinion as well.
Yep. I would entertain a motion to approve or not approve. MJ? Your motion is to,
To approve.
thank you.
Sorry.
Second? And Manny? All those in favor? That's unanimous. 2 down.
Okay, Resolution 3 is litigation for fair school finance. Again, this has been submitted by the Framingham School Committee, a very busy school committee. It deals with adequate funding for all children. And it also discusses, touches upon the foundation budget formula. I looked into the case, it referenced the McDuffie versus Driscoll. And as we know, under Mass Constitution, the Commonwealth has an enforceable duty to provide education in the public school for children enrolled, regardless of rich, poor, with or without regard to fiscal capacity of the community or district in which students live. And in that litigation, I think it was brought forth from, for specific, it was out of 19 districts where the plaintiff, but I think notably in the summative of the ruling, Springfield, Brockton, Lowell, and Wichita were found not to be making adequate implementation of the mass frameworks, nor were they equipping students for what they needed to know because of financiary issues. Springfield, Brockton, Lowell, as you know, are large urban districts. Wichita is a very small, I have a couple acquaintances on the school committee out there. It's a very small rural district, and they struggle, the community financially, they struggle to meet the needs of the rigor of which the Department of Education requires for student learning. So the proposal for this resolution is pretty much, it's to reassess the need for a new round of litigation to secure funding for school districts of this sort, to assess the viability of a lawsuit to secure funding. They're asking us to allow MASC to spend money on litigation to advocate for more funding for schools of this sort, to bring them up to the same level as other districts, and so that all children can learn to the requirements of the DESE, if I said that correctly, if I captured it all. I'm in support of, personally in support of this piece.
Any comments? All right, I would entertain a motion. Yes, Jen?
I'll make a motion.
To approve?
To approve.
All right, second. MJ, all those in favor?
Okay, on to Resolution 4. Privatization of public education and the oversight of public schools, including small and regional districts. This speaks to the public funding, be of state or federal money, going towards tuition and/or subsidized tuition costs of private schools, except with the exception of special education programs. So this is to ensure that state and public money is not used in subsidizing private schools and private school tuitions, which I'm in complete favor of, because a lot of these private institutions do not come under the same regulations and guidance and checks and balances that we public schools do. So, and until that piece changes, I'm in agreement with this resolution to strongly advocate against that funding piece to those, to private schools and for those purposes.
I'm in agreement. Any comments?
100% agree.
100% agree, yeah. All right, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to
Jen?
approve Resolution 4.
All right, and a second? MJ? All those in favor? That is unanimous.
On to Resolution 5, use of federal funds. In a nutshell, this resolution is to advocate or to support MASC's lobbying to ensure that the ability of the Commissioner, Secretary of Education, Board of Elementary Education not to act, I guess, try to put this in layman's term. If there's federal money coming in or state money coming in for public schools, this would not allow the Commissioner, Secretary of Education, or the Board of Education to take a brokering fee. Any money, any grant funding that comes in from the federal government and state government trickles through the Department of Education, and it comes to public schools by means of grant. So this would pretty much say, you can act as the broker, but you cannot take a broker's fee for that funding. All that funding should go directly to public schools and not be siphoned off by the management.
Geez, this is a tough one.
Well, is there any more information on that? And do we know why they take the fee and?
Because they can.
I didn't have an opportunity to research the Perkins Vocational Tech Education Act, which I think would shed a lot more insight to that. But in all honesty, I mean, if grants and funding from the federal government are supposed to go to enrich the programming within our public schools to keep up with the demand of rigor and the expectation for what our kids need to know, and then we have districts like Wilmington, Lowell, Brockton, who need to try to lower that in order to get more funding. I just think that there's more, I mean, we still are dealing with a lot of unfunded and underfunded mandates. And I think, monies earmarked by the federal government and state government should go directly to those schools without, garnishing a fee. That's just my personal opinion.
I would entertain a motion.
I'll entertain that.
To approve?
Yeah, approve the motion.
For the second? Manny? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Okay, Resolution 6, almost there. Foundation budget. It's just it's a review. Again, it touches upon the McDuffie case about giving appropriate monies to schools to be able to support their students and giving their teachers the tools in their classrooms to educate to the expectation of states the vast frameworks, but I'm assuming in that is Common Core, since that has changed. So it's to reconvene further deliberations and working on a more current, more viable foundation budget number. Currently, they were using a formula that was outdated to 1993. So I think this is an in-progress resolution from a previous conventions. That's how I interpret this resolution.
Can I ask, did Paul or Frank have any input or insight into this, or?
Yeah, I think this resolution just asks to enact the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Commission, which was done in October of 2015, which had a lot of improvements to the foundation budget as far as using more accurate health insurance costs, inflation rates, and so forth. So, yeah, I think the group of people who worked on I don't know if I have it, but there were a lot of people that were on this commission, and they spent a lot of time going over it, and that was their recommendation. And it was members of MASBO, Superintendent's Association, and a whole bunch of other places and they came up with these recommendations that I think wanted to be enacted over time, but just updating health insurance rates and including retiree health insurance and the special ed that we just spoke about. You know, I think, you know, the group that came up with these recommendations, and I think they did a very good job.
I agree with everything you just said, and think that this would be a good resolution to pass for Wilmington and all of the school districts in the state.
Excellent. All right. Any comments from the membership? All right, I would entertain a motion. Jen,
Make a motion to approve Resolution 6.
second. MJ, all those in favor? That is unanimous.
Great, last one is Resolution 7, the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid. This is to advocate to Congress to preserve the Affordable Care Act and the expansion of the Medicaid programs for the states, and further urges the general court to require the 100% of Medicaid reimbursements to cities and towns be provided in full amount to the public schools of each municipality to underwrite the cost of providing an adequate education. I think it can't be clearer than that.
Yeah, currently, the schools cannot bill health insurance for services, correct?
You know,
Or is that not the case?
We do, file for Medicaid and so forth. We use UMass Boston Medical actually does it. Our special ed department as well as the central office puts information together. Medicaid payments do come in and goes to the town, the general fund.
Okay.
So if that's what this is asking.
And that's revenue, obviously, would depend on that.
And that revenue goes to the town. Yeah, so it's within Wilmington. I can argue they factor that in their budgeting process as well. I don't know if it necessarily earmarked to the school, but in the whole budgeting revenue, from the town perspective, it's part of the revenue that then gets allocated for costs throughout the town, including the school budget.
I also think, though, too, on a broader spectrum, if I'm interpreting this accurately, and I see Ms. Brown, I'm sorry, Alice. LaGrange Brown. I think, though, too, as part of this piece is, especially with the kids, our students with special needs, they not only require those supports of OT and speech within a school district, but a lot of them also require it within their outside of the school period of time. And if that is removed from our families, what happens in the home sustains what is done in the school. To take away that home piece as well because of state budgetary cuts could really impact our students' learning within our schools. So I take this resolution in a broader term, which I still think impacts our students and their ability to learn emotionally, socially, in their learning day. So I think this is one that not only impacts our school district, but also our community and children who benefit from this.
Anything else? I would entertain a motion. MJ?
I'll make a motion to support this resolution.
All right. Second by Jen. All those in favor? I think, I might be wrong, but I think this is the first time since I've been on the board that we've voted to support every resolution.
It'd be interesting to see what comes up in that discussion.
All right. That concludes our regularly scheduled business. Now, public comments? Anybody in the back? Not all at once. All right. And subcommittee reports. Membership, does anybody have anything to report? Moving, yeah, okay.
I don't think so. No.
Moving right along. Correspondence, MJ?
Yes. Thank you. I do have one letter written to Superintendent Ruggiero from Charlotte Wood of the Wilmington Library. She's the Assistant Library Director. October 3rd, 2017. Dear Mr. Bjork, oh, forgive me, it's meant to you.
You can cross that out and put Ruggiero in there if you want. So,
Okay, I am writing to acknowledge Assistant School Superintendent Sean Gallagher for his support of the Wilmington, Mass. Memories Roadshow, a local history event sponsored by the Wilmington Memorial Library and UMass Boston that took place Saturday, September 30th, 2017. A planning meeting made up of many community partners helped make this event a success. Mr. Gallagher represented the Wilmington Public Schools, and his involvement made a big impact on the roadshow. Mr. Gallagher's busy schedule includes many school-related evenings, but he still managed to attend 4 of the 5 MMRS planning meetings, driving all the way back from Salem to attend the last one. The roadshow needed 15 to 20 volunteers, and he offered to see if high school students could fill this role. Even though the event occurred a month after school opened, he was ready at the September 11th planning meeting with 16 confirmed high school volunteers. The numbers eventually grew to 20 plus. I want to add that all the high school students were terrific. They put their skills to work scanning photos, writing photo description, and guiding contributors to the proper stations. The roadshow could not have happened without them. At the last planning meeting, Sean Neville from WCTV suggested handing out MMRS flyers at the football game the Thursday before the roadshow. Mr. Gallagher emailed the following day stating Athletic Director Tim Alberts, along with WCTV staff, would take on this task. He also sent out a school-wide phone call to all Wilmington parents about the Mass Memories Roadshow, reminding them of the event. I also heard from one of our patrons that Mr. Gallagher handed out flyers at a Wilmington Educational Foundation meeting singing the praises of the roadshow. Mr. Gallagher met with Carolyn Goldstein, the UMass Boston roadshow manager, and me at the high school cafeteria the week before the event so we could talk to the custodial staff about the setup. He also arranged to have Assistant High School Principal Jonathan Miranda and Athletic Director Tim Alberts stop by so they would be aware of our needs. He stopped by the training session the Friday before the roadshow and handed out special roadshow t-shirts to the student volunteers, then stopped by the roadshow the following day to see how everything was going. Mr. Gallagher embraced his role as a planning partner, which contributed greatly to the success of the Wilmington Mass Memories Roadshow. It was a pleasure working with him and collaborating with him on this community event. Sincerely, Charlotte Wood. Very good.
That wasn't from my mother? No, it was a great community event. There was just so many people that were, we all came together, the high school staff, the kids, and I'm
I have to
taken
say-
back by that letter. I really
It was wonderful.
appreciate that.
But I think it was well-deserved, too. I had the opportunity to go, and not that I had anything to contribute, but I just wanted to see what it was all about. I love learning more about this community, and it was just, the students, though, gracious, opening doors and but being very bold and saying, hi, how are you? And not shying away from that, and just going through the stations. It was just fabulous. The amount of recording and documenting and archiving elements that go into it. It was just fascinating.
I think and that's what this great community is all about. You know, sometimes we had some not so positive comments and all of that, but I'll tell you, you know, from my work in the last year and a half in Wilmington, during the time of need or during any type of adversity, this community comes together, and this was a great opportunity to really tell a story through, you know, archives and pictures of the great traditions here. And so it was just a great event. Everyone came together. I mean, I don't deserve any of what was written in that letter. It was a bunch of people come together, and I felt it was a great opportunity for us to really show what Wilmington's all about, and it was great. I learned a lot about Wilmington by working with a lot of the people in this town. So I'm glad it turned out well.
I have to tell you, I told Charlotte I thought she was laying it on kind of thick. I got to tell you, I heard such great things about it. I wish I could have been there with my family, but yeah, I heard great things not only from Charlotte but from other people who said they saw you there and that you were You're doing a great job.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Any further correspondence?
I believe that's it for the evening.
All right, so important future meeting dates. We will next meet in public on October 25th, followed by November 8th. And so I would welcome one further motion to not only adjourn, but to enter into executive session, from which we will not return. Anybody willing to make such a motion? Manny?
Make a motion to adjourn and move to executive session.
All right,
Will
I'm
we
going
not
to read,
return?
just to make it official, I'll read the motion. Manny's motion is to move into executive session. The Wilmington School Committee will enter into executive session pursuant to MGL.C.330A S21A3:, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining and litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Teacher and cafeteria units are what we will be discussing. The school committee will not return to public session following this executive session. I do need I need a second, and now we need to do a roll call vote. Jen? If you want to enter, if you're ready to enter into executive, yes.
Jen Bryson, right?
Yes. Tom?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
Manny?
Yes.
Chair says yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.